The first time my wife's boss called me, I assumed he'd dialed the wrong number. I was standing in the kitchen trying to fix a leaking faucet when my phone vibrated. The number wasn't saved. I answered. Hello? A man's voice said, Is this Daniel Carter? Yes. This is Richard Hayes. I recognized the name immediately. Richard was my wife's boss. He was the CEO of the company where Claire had worked for almost 7 years. I'd met him exactly twice, once at a company Christmas party and once at Claire's promotion dinner. Neither conversation had lasted more than 2 minutes. So when he said, I'd like to offer you a position at my company, I actually laughed. Sorry, I'm serious. I looked at the leaking faucet, then at my phone. You've got the wrong person. No. I have your resume. That stopped me. I've never sent you my resume. I know. The confidence in his voice disappeared for a moment. Then he said, That's exactly why I want to meet you. I asked when. Tomorrow. 10 o'clock. Don't tell Claire. My hand froze. What? I'd rather explain everything in person. Then he ended the call. I stood there staring at my phone. The first thought that came into my head wasn't about the job. It was about my wife. Why would her boss want to hire me? And why did he specifically tell me not to tell her? That evening, Claire came home around 7. She kissed me, asked about dinner, complained about traffic. Everything seemed normal. I almost told her, but then I remembered Richard's final words. Don't tell Claire. I hated secrets, especially from my wife. But curiosity got the better of me. The next morning, I drove to Richard's office. His assistant took me directly into a private conference room. Richard was already waiting. There was a folder on the table. He stood and shook my hand. Thank you for coming. I sat down. Let's get straight to it. He opened the folder. Inside was an employment contract. My name was printed across the top. The position was Senior Operations Director. The salary was almost 3 times what I currently earned. I stared at the number. Why me? Richard didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, How much has Claire told you about the company? Pretty much everything. He smiled. No. She hasn't. I leaned back. What does that mean? Richard closed the folder. Your wife is very good at her job. I know. She's also very loyal. I know that, too. That's the problem. I frowned. Problem? Richard looked toward the glass wall, then lowered his voice. Someone inside this company has been stealing money. My expression changed. How much? Enough to destroy the company. He pushed a second folder across the table. This is where you come in. I opened it. Inside were financial records, emails, transaction reports, and several photographs. Then I saw something that made my stomach drop. My wife's name appeared on 3 of the documents. I looked at Richard. What is this? He said nothing. I flipped through the pages. One transaction had been approved using Claire's employee credentials. Another had been signed electronically under her name. Then I found the last document, a resignation letter. My wife's name was at the bottom, but Claire had never told me she was planning to resign. I looked up. She didn't write this. Richard nodded. I know. Then why is her name on it? Because whoever is doing this wants everyone to believe she did. I stared at him. Why? Richard leaned forward. Because in 48 hours, your wife is going to be blamed for everything. I felt the room suddenly become cold. What do you want me to do? Richard looked directly at me. I want you to take the job. I couldn't understand. Why? His answer was quiet. Because I need someone outside the company? Someone the thief doesn't know. To find out who is setting your wife up. I stared at the contract. Then my phone vibrated. A message from Claire. Richard just called me into his office. A second message arrived. Something is very wrong. I looked at Richard. He had already seen the messages. Then he said the words that made everything much more serious. Daniel, if Claire asks you whether you met me, You cannot tell her the truth yet. I didn't answer Richard immediately. I just stared at him. You want me to lie to my wife? I want you to keep her from being arrested. That sentence changed everything. I picked up the contract again. How long? Until we know who's behind this. And if I refuse? Richard's expression hardened. Then Claire becomes the easiest person to blame. I left his office with the contract in my bag. I didn't sign it, not yet. When I got home that evening, Claire was already there. She was sitting at the kitchen table. Her laptop was closed. Her coat was still on. She looked exhausted. Where were you? I put my keys down. Work. She stared at me. Daniel. Yes? Did you meet Richard today? My stomach tightened. I remembered his warning. I could have lied. Instead, I sat across from her. Why are you asking? She looked away. Because he called me into his office. And he asked me something strange. What? She looked directly at me. Whether you've ever seen confidential documents from my company. I said nothing. Claire's expression changed. You have. It wasn't a question. I reached into my bag and placed the folder on the table. Her face went completely pale. Where did you get that? Richard? She opened it. She turned page after page, then suddenly stopped. Daniel? What? This transaction isn't fake. I leaned forward. What do you mean? She pointed to one of the documents. The money was transferred? But I didn't approve it. Someone used your credentials. She shook her head. No, that's impossible. Why? Because my security token never leaves my desk. I looked at her. Who has access? She hesitated, then gave me 3 names: her assistant, the finance director, and Richard himself. I looked at the contract. Richard thinks someone is setting you up. Claire stared at me. Richard told you that? I realized I'd said too much. She stood. You met him. I didn't answer. Daniel, I met him. She stepped back. Why didn't you tell me? Because he asked me not to. Why? I handed her the contract. She read the first page, then the salary. Her eyebrows rose. You were offered this? Yes. And you didn't tell me? I was trying to understand why. She looked at me for a long moment, then she laughed. Not because anything was funny, because she was overwhelmed. Do you know what the strangest part is? What? I was about to resign tomorrow. I froze. Why? She opened her laptop. There was an email on the screen. I discovered irregular payments 3 weeks ago. I started investigating. Someone noticed. And yesterday, someone threatened me. My voice dropped. Who? She turned the laptop toward me. There was an anonymous message. Stop looking or your husband will be next. I felt the room go cold. They knew about me. Claire nodded. That's why I didn't tell you. For the first time, I understood what Richard had really been asking me to do. He wasn't trying to recruit me because I was qualified. He was trying to put someone beside Claire who the person behind the scheme wouldn't expect. But there was still one problem. Richard had told me the thief was inside the company. What if Richard himself was the thief? I looked at Claire. We can't trust anyone. She nodded. Agreed. The next morning, I accepted the job, but I didn't tell Richard that Claire and I had already figured out part of the scheme. My first day began with a simple assignment: review the company's internal security logs. By lunchtime, I found something strange. Someone had accessed Claire's account at 2:14 a.m. The login came from inside the company's headquarters. I checked the employee ID. My heart stopped. It belonged to Richard. I immediately called Claire. We have a problem. What happened? Your boss accessed your account. Silence. Then she said, Are you sure? Completely. I printed the security record. Then I noticed something else. Richard's account had been accessed at exactly the same time from another computer. Someone had used his credentials too. I stared at the screen. There was only one explanation. Someone was impersonating both of them. I ran another search. This time, I found the hidden account. It had been created 6 months earlier. The account holder's name was fake, but the recovery email wasn't. It belonged to someone I knew, someone who had been sitting beside me at Claire's promotion dinner, someone I had trusted. I called Claire. I know who it is. Who? I looked through the glass wall of my new office. The finance director was standing outside. He smiled at me. Then my phone received one final message. You should never have taken the job. I looked up again. The finance director was gone, and on my desk, someone had placed a photograph of my house, taken that morning.